So I didn't mention this last time, but generally in your meditation sessions, it's very good to just sit quietly and try to bring some mental focus and stability. So since I didn't talk about that last time, I thought we could start the session today with that. So, at the beginning of the session, always we set the motivation. And here, I just set a very brief version of our normal contemplation on bodhicitta, thinking that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings. And therefore, in order to benefit them in the most effective way, I must achieve the state of enlightenment. In order to do that, I need to realize all the stages of the path contained in Lamrim. And therefore, I'm going to do this meditation on Lamrim. And then we can continue. So getting into a comfortable meditation position. And then I always like to follow the Tibetan saying that, our mind should be in the body and our body is on the cushion. So the significance here is, normally in our daily life, we are constantly distracted by various thoughts, planning about the future, remembering things about the past. So here, when we connect with our body, and particularly the sensations in the body, then these are only in the present moment. So if we can do that, then all of these various thoughts will naturally fall away. So one thing I like to do is at the beginning, just ask yourself how you know you're sitting. How do you know you're sitting? And so probably you'll feel the weight of your body on the cushion beneath you. So really try to have a vivid impression of how that feels, the cushion beneath you. You might feel some parts, there's more pressure, others less. You could even, if you're careful and attentive, you can even know where exactly, the weight is felt and the places where it's not felt on the lower part of your body. You can generate an awareness of the upright posture and how your head is, centered or not centered relative to the rest of your torso. And here, if you find yourself leaning forward or to the side, you can just gently adjust that. And also take a moment to bring your awareness to your face and your facial muscles. Oftentimes we hold tension in the muscles around the eyes or the mouth, or the eyebrows, in the cheeks. So make sure all those muscles are nice and soft. Let go of any tension. Allow yourself to relax. And then we can switch our awareness to the breath. So in a similar way, you can ask yourself, how do you know that you're breathing? Means where is the breath manifesting in your physical continuum? So some of you might feel the rising and falling of the abdomen. Some might feel the expansion and contraction of the chest and rib cage. Others of you might even feel the air as it passes over the skin in the nostril region. So wherever is most vivid and prevalent for you, just place your mind's awareness there. Just breathing very naturally, very effortlessly, not trying to control the breath in any way. And just watching. And if other thoughts come to the mind, then try not to engage with them. Just let them pass away on their own accord. Okay, so now should have a bit of mental calm and stability. And then we can go to the sort of main body of the meditation and start with the preliminary prayers. Here, visualizing the objects of refuge in the space in front of you. So here we'll do the visualization, the many into one, as it's called. So visualizing our Guru in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us, at the level of our forehead, about 2 meters in front of us. And recalling that our Guru encapsulates all the 3 jewels of refuge. And remembering those qualities, wishing to attain them. That's why we have to take refuge. We have to devote ourselves to the path of Dharma. And then also visualizing all the sentient beings in the space around us. Thinking how they've been our mothers, not just once, but many times in the past. Showered us with every type of kindness and benefit. And now still are suffering, drowning, as it were, in the ocean of samsara without break. So now that we have attained this precious human rebirth, that gives us every single conducive condition for practice to allow us to make utmost progress along the path to enlightenment, which is, as we had mentioned, the one state, the one condition that will enable us to work most effectively for their benefit. Then we direct our efforts, all of our efforts, toward this attainment of enlightenment so we can be of utmost benefit for these mother sentient beings. So with that thought in mind, then we take refuge and generate bodhicitta. It's there on the screen. I take refuge until I'm led in the Buddha Dharma and the Supreme Assembly by merits of generosity and so forth. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. That was 3, right? Okay. So then we'll do the 4 measurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that knows no suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of attachment and hatred for those held close and distant. Okay, 7 in prayer. So last week we did more extensive meditation on it. This week we'll do just, a little bit abbreviated. But still, for each line, each of the 7 limbs, don't just recite the words, but try to meditate on the meaning. I prostrate reverently with my body, speech, and mind. So here visualizing numerous sort of replicas of yourself prostrating. Represent clouds of every type of offering, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I confess all my negative actions and downfalls collected from beginning this time. And rejoice in the virtues of ordinary beings and Aryas. So here we can pause and do a little bit more extensive meditation. Remembering all the virtue that you've done in this life from beginningless past lives. And then to generate a thought of rejoicing, thinking how wonderful it is that I have practiced virtue in the past, that I am practicing virtue in the present. So you can be specific, taking a sort of mental inventory of all the good deeds to benefit others, all the effort you've put into your study and practice of Dharma. And then meditating on rejoicing in the virtues of others. So here, they say the ordinary beings, that means those not yet realized emptiness. And then, of course, the Aryas, those who have realized emptiness, particularly the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. So recalling how amazing, what amazing actions these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas undertake to benefit sentient beings. Okay. Please remain until the end of cycle of existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for transmigratory beings. I dedicate my own and others' virtue to great enlightenment. Mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, shuma flowers adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niratayami. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find the foundation of all good qualities. For some reason, I usually do Control F, right? Control F doesn't work. Let's see. Here we go. I'm in prayers. Here we go. Okay. So I remember in the previous module, one of your homework assignments was to memorize this. So we don't need the screen share, right? Nonetheless, let's do here. Okay. So again, we do the foundational good qualities, the other stanzas in a, kind of mindful yet a little bit quick way, but at least allows us to review. They call it a, scanning meditation of the Lamrim. And then for the topic that we're covering in more detail, here the faults of samsara and the origin of suffering. We're going to cover those two topics today, and then we'll pause at that stanza and do a more extensive meditation. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect guru, correctly following the guru is the root of the path. By my clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the guru with great respect. When I have discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, it is extremely difficult to find again and is greatly meaningful. Please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind, taking its essence day and night. This body and life are changing like a water bubble. Remember how quickly they perish and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcoming, and in accomplishing all virtuous deeds. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, there is no satisfaction in enjoying them. They are the door to all suffering, and they cannot be trusted. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Okay. Oh, no. Okay. So now we'll go to so now we'll do the meditation, doing the deep dive on faults of samsara. And so first, recalling the reason why we developed this mind of renunciation, or the mind yearning for liberation, right? Always good to set the context. So here, Lama Tsongkhapa in 3 principal aspects of the path. Without the complete intention, definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for psychic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. Right. So remembering the purpose, why we're meditating on these unpleasant aspects of samsara. Right? We have to first view the drawbacks of our current state so that we can aspire for something more, something better. Until we do that, then we'll just be, doing the seeking the pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. And then that itself binds us continuously in the ocean of samsara, where we'll experience all these various sufferings that we're now going to remember and contemplate. Okay. So in the last session, we did the 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering. So today, 8 types of suffering. So first, just to sort of have an overview. So we have the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Then the suffering of encountering what is unpleasant, the suffering of separation from what is pleasant, the suffering of not getting what you want, and the suffering of the 5 appropriate aggregates. So again, as I mentioned, in your daily practice, then perhaps you would only choose one, the suffering of birth, and use that as a basis for contemplation for one day, and then the next day move on to the next. But we only have two sessions, so we're gonna try to cram all 8 in, and then you'll know how to do it, and then you can do yourself in the coming days. All right. So the suffering of birth. This is 5 contemplations. So I'll sort of guide that, and then I'll pause and you do the analytic meditation to the point where you come to this conclusion that birth is associated with all these various types of suffering. So the first is birth is suffering because it is associated with pain. Thinking of the pain of the process of childbirth, and how the baby, when it comes out, is crying, is cold, usually is, yeah, a great shock. Then birth is suffering because it is associated with dysfunctional tendencies. So here, because it has been projected by previous karma and delusion, then we have this body, the contaminated aggregates, that then experiences various types of pain, sickness, problems, right? So why do we experience all of these sufferings? It's because we've taken this kind of rebirth. Then birth is suffering because it is the origin of suffering. So yeah, there. The suffering of old age, sickness, and eventually death all come about because we have taken a birth in samsara. Birth is suffering because it is the origin of the afflictions. So then, because we haven't abandoned the afflictions in the past, then as we go through life, we have these pleasant and unpleasant experiences and sensations, and then those give rise to attachment and aversion and the other afflictions. And lastly, birth is suffering because it is an unwanted separation. So, as it is said, all the beings who are born must die. At death, we have all these, unwanted means we don't choose to die. No one will choose to die. And as we die, then all the things that we like, enjoy in this life, we're going to be separated from. So why do we die? Because we were born in samsara. So then just contemplate any number of those points, whatever is sort of most effective and powerful for your mind, until you reach the conclusion that, oh, yes, this birth within samsara is something so fraught with difficulties and suffering. And when you reach that conclusion, let your mind sink into it. So it'll take a few minutes for that type of analytic meditation. Okay. So now we'll continue with the contemplation of the suffering of old age. So here there's 5 contemplations. A handsome body deteriorates. So, yeah, I think we all know, we start to get wrinkles, our hair turns gray or perhaps falls out. And, get a bit, how should we say, saggy. And yeah, our sort of youthful appearance degenerates. Our physical strength and vigor deteriorate. We also start to get various pains in the joints and get more tired more easily. The senses deteriorate. Our vision starts to go. The enjoyment of sense objects fades. So, some of our favorite foods that we used to enjoy, then they don't bring the same kind of pleasure. Or sometimes because of doctor's orders, we're told not to eat, our favorite fried foods or, desserts and things. And in general, this whole deterioration of life is painful. Mm. So again, contemplate these 5, and especially try to make it real for your own experience. Maybe you've experienced some of these things yourself, or you saw an older relative or someone you know that experienced this, and try to arrive at that conclusion very strongly in your heart that, oh yes, getting old is associated with all of these various types of suffering. So pause for a few minutes and do your own contemplation. Okay, so continuing on suffering of sickness. Here again, 5 further points to consider. How illness changes the nature of the body. So, sometimes when we're sick, then, we can lose a lot of weight. Sometimes become bedridden. Then the pain and anguish increase and are seldom absent. There's no desire for attractive things. You must have recourse, however unwillingly, to unpleasant objects. Means sometimes we have to undergo unpleasant treatments, like say chemotherapy or radiation therapy, surgeries of various kinds, and you lose your vital energy. So again, taking a moment now to pause and contemplate these points. Hopefully, you haven't experienced severe illness yet, but maybe some of you have, or you'll know a loved one who has, undergone this kind of illness. So again, making it real for yourself and arriving at that conclusion very strongly in your heart that samsaric existence is very unbearable, because you'll have to sooner or later experience all these suffering of sickness. Okay, so moving on to the suffering of death. Here for 5 further contemplations. So death is in the nature of suffering because At the time of death, you're separated from objects that are fine and attractive. You're separated from close relatives who are fine and attractive. You're separated from companions who are fine and attractive. And you're deprived of a body that is fine and attractive. So here, there's actually quite mirrors the nine round death meditation, where it says, at the time of death, the only thing that matters is Dharma. Why? Because friends won't help, your possessions won't help, even your body won't help. Right? And then as you die, you experience terrible pain and anguish. Probably it should be mentioned. So this is talking about the suffering within samsara, right? So it is said, if we were to attain nirvana in this lifetime, then we won't experience terrible pain and anguish as we die. But in any case, if we continue as we have been doing, probably we're not going to attain nirvana in this life, right? So in any case, let's meditate for a few minutes on these points. Again, trying to evoke very forcefully in the mind this thought of the realness of the unbearable nature of the suffering of death. Okay, moving on. The suffering of encountering what is unpleasant. So here again, 5 contemplations. Merely encountering your enemies, for example, causes pain and anguish. You dwell in fear of being punished by them. You fear that they will speak maliciously without kind words. You dread death. And you worry that you will go to a miserable realm after death for having acted in ways contrary to the teaching. So here, this one, I've taken this from Lamrim Chenmo, and here it uses the example of encountering enemies. But as we contemplate, then I don't think there's a shortage of unpleasant things that we experience in our daily lives. So you can also tailor it to your own experience, what you've been going through in your own life. In any case, the point is, within samsara, we have very little to no control of the things that happen to us. And so because of that lack of control, we're bound to experience various unpleasant events, people, and situations. So now try to generate that thought of how this nature, of samsara, is flawed and brings this type of suffering. Then next, the suffering of separation from what is pleasant. So not only are we encountering unpleasant things without any choice, but those rare times when we do have a pleasant experience, then we're bound, due to the forces of impermanence, we're bound to be separated from what is pleasant. Then when that happens in your mind, sorrow arises. In your speech, you lament. You bring harm to your own body. You're saddened, recalling and missing the good qualities of what you have lost. And recourse is no longer available for what you have lost. So, again, making it real for your life, your situation. So, yeah, maybe you've experienced all 5 of these. If you've had a difficult breakup, the ending of a romantic relationship. But anyway, make it real for your own situation and life experience. Contemplate, and then when you do get that thought arise that, oh yes, while I'm in samsara, I'm bound to experience the suffering of separation from what is unpleasant again and again, then hold your mind on that conclusion. So next, the suffering of not getting what you want. So here in Lamrim Shenwa, it says to use the same 5 contemplations. Yeah, probably number 5. We can say recourse is no longer available for what you did not get, right? So again, making it real for your life. Maybe thinking of something that you strived to achieve. And despite your best efforts, then things didn't turn out the way you had hoped. And then always relating it to the fact that this is part of samsara, this uncontrolled, mm, all these experiences that we have very little control over. Then lastly, this suffering of the five appropriate aggregates. So here again, sometimes you'll see contaminated appropriate aggregates. But in any case, the main point is, right, as we take birth in samsara, this whole process is due to the karma and afflictions. So then, this body we've taken has been projected by karma and afflictions. We still have the karma and afflictions in our continuum. And so we're constantly creating more causes for suffering in the future. And therefore, they're in the nature of suffering because of these 5 points here. They're the vessels for future suffering, the vessels for suffering based on what presently exists. So, and then the vessels for the 3 types of suffering that we contemplated last week: the suffering of pain, suffering of change, and suffering of conditionality. So this one is actually, it's the root, most important one. So, when we relate it to the other sufferings, we think, oh, suffering of sickness. Oh, why did he get sick? Why did I get sick? So ultimately, yes, there might have been a virus or bacteria cause infection or something, but ultimately it's because we've taken rebirth with this type of body and mind projected by karma and affliction, and therefore because we have this body, we're subject to getting sick. Because we have this type of body, we're subject to get old. Because we have this type of body, that our experiences are determined by our previous karma, and we don't have control, then we meet with things we don't like, we're separated from the things we do like, and so forth. So the conclusion that we must then make is I must attain liberation, from all these various types of suffering. And how we do that, we have to eliminate the causes of samsara. So here, this quotation by Geshe Bhotala, right? As soon as we are born as any one of the 6 types of beings, we are faced with the suffering of sickness, death, and so forth. When the causes of sickness are present, when the cause of sickness is present, we are sick. When the cause of death is present, we die. This is neither inappropriate nor accidental. It is the nature, it is the character or nature of cyclic existence. While we are in cyclic existence, there's no escaping it. If we are disgusted by it, then we must eliminate the process of birth. To do this, we must eliminate its cause. So anyway, contemplating along these lines, then generate that strong, forceful conclusion in your heart that I must achieve the state of liberation by abandoning the causes of samsara, karma, and afflictions. Okay. So, I wanted to split up our 2 hours into, 2 segments. We can take a little break. So, you can relax your sitting posture. Take a drink. Relax a bit. And then, so like we did last week, maybe opening it up for any questions that you might have. Yes, no, maybe so. Well, before we jump into the next contemplation, maybe in our kind of break time, I'll share a story with you. I'm not sure I shared this. I'm not sure I shared it with you, but it's one of my favorite. Favorite. So it's actually a little bit unpleasant, but you see, we always talk about the wisdom arising from hearing, the wisdom arising from contemplation, the wisdom arising from meditation. And I'm always emphasizing we have to make what is there in the text sort of real in our lives. So anyway, this story has given me a lot of fuel for contemplation over the years. So I like sharing it. Anyway, as many of you know, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and my mother, fortunately, still lives there. So I get to visit her from time to time. Anyway, my mother, when I was growing up, she would always hold a Christmas party. And one thing, maybe you in California get this too, but if you have relatives who are from colder places in the US, or anywhere in the world, they'll very much like to come to a warm place for Christmas. So my mother always, would have visitors come and during the winter. I had an uncle who lived in Chicago, and he would always come to Hawaii every winter to escape the brutal cold of winter. Anyway, so my mother would host a Christmas party, and one of her friends is from Texas, and his mother would always come to Hawaii for Christmas as well. Anyway, her name was Mary Lou Walker. Mary Lou. And so one year, unfortunately, Mary Lou had a stroke, and it was quite bad. And she had to undergo the speech therapy, physical therapy, all these things. But after some months of doing that, she was good enough to travel, so she still did come to Hawaii, but her recovery was, still ongoing. So she comes to my mother's Christmas party, and everyone's happy to see her. She goes to the toilet, and in the toilet, she's then unable to stand back up. And so anyway, she calls her son's partner, who comes then into the bathroom and helps her up. And sorry, as she's leaving the party, she's just totally crying and bawling tears down her face. And she keeps repeating to herself, I never thought this would happen to me. I never thought this would happen to me. I never thought this would happen to me. Anyway, this is giving me a lot to think about. Part of the point and why we do these meditations on suffering, I know it's unpleasant, but part of it is so that we think these things are going to happen to us, right? On one level, and she's a very fine woman, very nice woman, but on one level, for a Buddhist practitioner, we shouldn't say that. I never thought this would happen to me. We should be meditating on the faults of samsara and to think, this will happen to me. Either we're going to die before we get old, or if we are fortunate enough to live to an old age, we will have, a sickness that's going to totally sap our life force. So yeah, in your own, when you're getting the wisdom arising from contemplation, right? Actually, if we had more time in the teachings, I would tell more stories. But the point is, you need to have your own stories, right? For each of these little outlines and lamrim, you have your own story relating to your life, And then it becomes real for you, you know? It must have been, yeah, like 27 years ago, right? That happened 25, 27 years ago. And still, you know, I recall it and it affects me. So good, you know? So these little nuggets, you know, as you go through your practice, you got to collect those, you know, like gold. Then some little transformation, you know, it happens. And you collect those too. Then over a long period of time, hopefully, we can enact the kind of transformation that we're looking for. Okay. And don't be afraid to cry. If you're really thinking well, it should affect you deeply, you know? But we don't think about it deep enough. Even our contemplations, they're on such a superficial level that it doesn't affect the mind. And that's why the Dharma isn't sort of working for us, right? As Shantideva says, you know, like a sick person, if we only take the medicine once, you know, it's not going to cure us. So we need repeated application of the antidotes, going deeper and deeper, affecting our mind on more profound levels. Okay? All right. So that was your break. So as we say, right, that was the break, not from Dharma practice, but that was the break from formal seated practice. Right. Okay. Now we'll continue with the next meditation. And so we're also supposed to meditate on the true cause of suffering, true origins. Is my picture blurry? Yeah? No?
No, it looks good.
Okay. I look blurry to myself, but the rest of you look very clear, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, okay. So next, we're supposed to meditate on the 6 root afflictions and their antidotes. So here to remember the outlines of the section on afflictions in Lamrim Chenmo. So we had the reflection on the process of psychoexistence. We had a reflection on the true suffering, and now we have true origin. So there in true origin, we have how the afflictions arise. This has 4 contemplations, identifying the afflictions, the order in which the afflictions arise, causes of the afflictions, and faults of the afflictions. So, identifying the afflictions. So here we have Arya Sangha saying the affliction is defined as a phenomenon that when it arises is disturbing in character and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. Then here we have the presentation of the 6 root afflictions: attachment, hostility, pride, ignorance, doubt, wrong view. We also discussed the 10 root afflictions, where the number 6, wrong view, is further divided into 5. Okay. But in any case, we're supposed to meditate on the 6 root afflictions and their antidotes. What I thought we could do is do a little bit deeper in attachment and hostility or anger. But in general, when we talk about having an antidote, how we apply the antidotes to the afflictions, one common thing that we can do is just to recognize the faults of them, right? So whenever a various affliction, whatever affliction arises, then to recall their faults, and that in and of itself will help lessen its strength. So here we had this statement, Lama Tsongkhapa actually summarizing the faults of the afflictions as they're presented in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras by Maitreya. So here, when an affliction arises, at first it completely afflicts the mind, causing you to err with regard to what you are observing, reinforcing your latent proclivities, and causing the same affliction to recur. It may harm you, others, or both. It leads to misdeeds in this life, in future lives, or in both. It creates experiences of pain and anguish, as well as the sufferings of birth and the like. It takes you far from Nirvana. Your virtue is destroyed and your resources are depleted. In society, you feel apprehensive, joyless, and devoid of confidence, while your notoriety spreads in all directions. And excellent persons, such as teachers and protectors, rebuke you. You die with regret, your aims unfulfilled, and after death, you're reborn into a miserable realm. So here, let's take a moment and kind of take an inventory of those various faults as is presented here. Then after getting this clear notion of the faults of the afflictions, to then take the conclusion or make the affirmation that from now on in the future, I must not let myself come under the control of the afflictions. Okay, so that was the sort of general faults of the afflictions. And now I thought we could do, attachment and anger in a sort of deeper way. So first, let's meditate on antidotes for attachment. And here we contemplate the faults of attachment. So here we have, as we said in the beginning, right? Without pacifying the thought that wishes for the, kind of marvels of existence, then we're not going to generate the mind of renunciation, right? So these pleasant and attractive things that we have in samsara, because of our attachment to them, then we don't strive for liberation. So here we have to consider that those very objects of our attachment, they never last. They're impermanent in nature. And then these contaminated objects are in the nature of suffering, leading to dissatisfaction. The object itself is not truly existent, but illusory. And then the uncertainty of the fulfillment of desire. So here, I think it means, even if we get that object, then will we be fulfilled? Probably not. We think we want whatever, one object, we get it, it's still not satisfactory. And then next, the other negative minds arise, like possessiveness, anger, jealousy, pride, and insecurity. And then attachment also exaggerates the importance of the object, leading to disappointment, thus cheating us. And as you mentioned, keeps us in samsara, suffering endlessly, stopping the experience of true happiness. Why? Here we're talking about the opportunity cost, right? Because we're so attracted to and attached to these pleasant objects in samsara, we spend all of our time and energy trying to get those rather than striving for liberation. Hence, it distracts us from achieving these meaningful realizations of the three principles of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom, realizing emptiness and attaining enlightenment. So here again, we'll contemplating along these lines. We're really trying to come to that conclusion that attachment has all of these faults, all of these drawbacks. But the primary one being that as long as we haven't overcome the attachment to objects in samsara, then there's no renunciation. No renunciation means also no bodhicitta. No bodhicitta means no enlightenment. And then no liberation or no enlightenment means all of these various sufferings that we've gone through, we're bound to experience endlessly. We have been experiencing from beginningless time, and as long as we're still attached to these pleasant objects within samsara, then our future suffering is also bound to be endless. Okay. So then, cultivating the antidotes to attachment. So here they list 5. Meditating on impermanence and death. So both the object that you're so attracted to is impermanent in nature. Therefore, any satisfaction or happiness you derive from that object will also be impermanent, also will come to an end. And then meditating on death, to think that however many pleasant experiences we might have, whatever attractive objects we might accumulate, then at our time of death, then we go on to the next life alone. And even forgetting about death, even the pleasant experiences we had, some minutes ago, are gone and no longer with us. So, as Shantideva said in Bodhisattva Charivatara, I forget the exact words, but something like, at our time of death, we must depart alone. But not knowing this, I committed all sorts of negative actions for the sake of friends and foes. Then we have to meditation on the faults of the object. So here, as we mentioned, attachment has this sort of nature of exaggerating the good qualities of the object. So to counteract that, we should think about the faults of the object. Nothing is 100% good or bad in samsara. And therefore, although the mind of attachment exaggerates, projects, and views the object as being 100% good, then we can see, if we contemplate a bit deeper, within samsara, there's always going to be some faults. So even something we consider to be good, like, getting wealth. Well, even, very rich people will complain about, I don't know, an increase in taxes, or, the stock market going down, or whatever, right? So, and all the effort they have to make to preserve the wealth. All the people trying to, cheat them, rob them, ask for things, right? We might think that becoming famous is something good, but yet you complain about, you hear celebrities complaining about being followed around by paparazzi or whatever, right? Having no privacy. So, in any case, to think in this way. One particular sort of division of that is we often have attachment to other people and the attractive body. So one element of that is to then contemplate on the impurities of the body. So I can't list the 32 impurities, but the various fluids that come out of the orifices, right? And then this is used as a contemplation that the body itself is impure because what it produces is impure. Then there's a meditation on the ultimately unsatisfactory nature of the object. Here, As we mentioned, then although we might, even if we attain the object, well, we're not satisfied. Actually, since beginningless samsaric rebirth, we've experienced every pleasure under the sun, not just once, but many times. We've been a powerful king. We've been a very famous celebrity. We've been top athletes. All of these things we've had. We've taken rebirth countless times as Indra, the Lord of the gods, and dwelled in that palace in the heaven of the 33. And yet, still, ultimately, though we experienced that thing, because it was in samsara, it was ultimately impermanent, and therefore we've now fallen back down to this state. Then lastly, the meditation on the non-true existence of that object. So those good qualities of the object appear to be intrinsically established from the side of the object, but as we know, the object doesn't exist intrinsically, doesn't exist truly from its own side. So since the object doesn't exist from its own side, then any qualities like attractiveness, beautifulness, whatever, also don't exist from the side of the object. So it's a bit of an overview. Let's take a moment, a few minutes, maybe whichever of those sort of you have a kind of a more affinity to, whichever one you think is more beneficial for your mind, then take a few minutes and meditate on that. Okay, so let's move on and do a brief meditation on anger and its antidotes. So again, as we before we apply the actual antidotes, it's good to think about the faults of anger. So here in the text, it talks about the visible faults of anger and the invisible faults of anger. So the visible faults of anger we can see with our own eyes, with our own experience. So when we get angry, we don't experience a peaceful and good mind. The joy and happiness that you had previously perish. You cannot regain them. You cannot sleep well, and you weaken the stability wherein your mind stays calm. When you have great hatred, even those for whom you've formerly cared forget your kindness and kill you. Even friends and relatives will get annoyed and leave you. And although you gather others with your generosity, they will not stay. So these are the faults as they're described in Shantideva's Patience chapter of Bodhisattva Charvatara. And then there's the invisible faults of anger. So it projects its own fruitions, which are extremely unpleasant. That means through anger, we then collect negative karma that then ripens as suffering experiences. And then there's this characteristic of anger that it can destroy previously created roots of virtue. Hence, it prevents the arising of the measureless, very pleasant fruitions of its opposite virtue. Means it destroys our roots of virtue. So, Shanideva says there's no sin, I guess, like hatred or anger, and therefore there's no virtue like patience. So what that means, anger, not only because you see this first one, right, projecting its own fruitions, attachment also does that. The other afflictions also do that. Through an affliction, we create negative karma. But anger is unique in that it also destroys previously accumulated roots of virtue. So let's just take a moment, get a sense of these faults, both visible and invisible. Again, making it real for your own experience. Okay. So then the actual antidotes to anger. And here are some outlines from the Patience chapter of Bodhisattva Charvatara. So we have to do two things, when we're harmed, then we have to contemplate that our anger is unjustified and actually compassion is appropriate. So then showing that our anger is unjustified, then there are three. On analysis of the object, the anger is unjustified. So here, the object means the person who has harmed us. Okay? So when we analyze and we contemplate, the nature of the person that has harmed us, then the only conclusion is, us getting angry means generating a mind then wishing to harm, wishing to retaliate to this person that has harmed us is unjustified. So here, contemplate in this way. So we think, okay, what would be some reasonable grounds for anger, getting angry towards those who harm us? So we normally think, okay, they had the thought of wanting to harm me, then prepared the method, and then prevented my happiness or inflicted unpleasant physical or mental suffering on me. Therefore, I'm justified in getting angry. So here, Shantideva then wants us to contemplate, okay, so then the person who's harmed us, did they have self-control when they harmed us? Or were they without self-control and then harmed us? Okay. So if we say they didn't have self-control, then our anger is unjustified because they themselves were, lack control. So then it's just like, they're probably under the control of their afflictions. And here we know from our own experience, when afflictions arise very strong, they can then propel us to do actions that, are harmful. So first, just contemplate that first choice and see, okay, if we say that those who have harmed us did not have control that time, and rather they're under the control of the afflictions, then come to see that it is not justified to get angry toward them. Then we can contemplate the other possibility that those who have harmed us did have self-control, but actually when we think about this more deeply, as we have described, in samsara, there is no self-control. We're constantly bound by karma and afflictions. And so since we have not abandoned the afflictions in the past, then we always have the seeds for them to arise. And then when we meet with certain causes and conditions, they will arise. So no one, sort of through their own volition says, okay, I'm going to be angry now. I'm going to get angry. But rather, some event happens that's a bit annoying. And then this anger, irritation arises quite naturally without us having to invite it into our mind. So thus, even if we think, oh, this person was in control, well, no. If the person is in samsara, then no one in samsara is under control of their afflictions. So the conclusion should still be the same. That actually it's the fault of the afflictions, not the fault of an agent totally in control of their actions. And therefore, just like it is said, to hate the sin and love the sinner, right? Similarly, we see the root cause of the harm perpetrated against us is not the person who harmed us, but the afflictions within their mental continuum. And therefore, the anger directed at the person is unjustified. So contemplate in that way and rest in that conclusion when it comes. Okay. Let's jump ahead to point 2, analysis of the subject. Anger is unjustified. So here that means, right, the subject is you, right? So here the contemplation is, you're experiencing the suffering now. It's so unbearable. The mind of anger, the mind that wishes to retaliate, thinks that by retaliating, then we'll, teach the other person a lesson, and then they'll think twice about harming us again in the future, right? That's what anger wants us to do. Okay. But actually, looking at it from a bit of Dharma wisdom, the root cause of the suffering we're experiencing is our negative karma. So if this present suffering is so unbearable, right? Then, of course, we're not going to want to experience suffering again in the future. Therefore, we should not engage in negative actions, which only lead to future suffering. Get it? So as Shantideva says, right? If I cannot endure even the slight suffering of the present, then why do I not stop my anger, the cause of suffering in the hells? So we're almost out of time. Take 1 minute and contemplate like that. Okay. So actually, we're almost out of time. So let's continue on with the rest of the foundation of all good qualities. Through my being led by this pure thought with great remembrance, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make keeping the individual liberation vows, the root of the teachings, my essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. By my seeing this, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta without familiarizing myself with the 3 types of morality, I cannot achieve enlightenment. By my seeing this well, please bless me to keep the vow of the sons of the victorious ones with fervent effort. By my having pacified distractions, wrong objects, and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to completely generate within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. When I become a suitable vessel by training in this common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles of the Vajrayana. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the 2 attainments is keeping my vows and samaya purely. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. Then when I've realized exactly the vital points of the 2 stages, the essence of the tantric sets, and am enjoying the yoga of 4 sessions with effort without being distracted by non-meditation objects, please bless me to accomplish these according to the teachings of the holy beings. Thus may the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners who correctly accomplish it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. And all my lives never separated from perfect gurus may enjoy the magnificent Dharma, and by completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay. So then at the end, after you've done that, you can think that the Buddha, who we've been visualizing the space in front of us, is extremely pleased, and then dissolves into our hearts, and our mind becomes inseparably one with the Buddha's mind. Okay, so that's that. Let's do another little dedication. So here, most important one, dissolve past, present, future merit collected by me, and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numbers of Buddhas and numbers of sentient beings. May bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings in the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. May it be generated in my heart and the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Then, for long life of silence, Lama. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life, and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And for long life, for lungs of Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers, honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Just all the past, present, future marks collected by me, the numbers of Buddhas and numbers of sentient beings, which are completely empty, existing from their own side. May I, whom completely empty, existing from my own side, achieve the state of full alignment, which is completely empty, existing from their own its own side, and the all sentient beings who are completely empty, existing from their own side, to that state, which is completely empty, existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty, existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train, just like the hero man Jushri knows reality, just like Samatha Bhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praises the best, but all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Okay, that's that, module 9. We're going to send out the self-assessment questions and have interviews. So take advantage of the opportunity. And thank you very much for your efforts. And yeah, we'll see you sometime in the future, I hope.
I hope so too.
Thank you, Venerable Namgyal. Thanks, Urs.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks for reminding.
Good night,
Be
everyone.
well.
Good night.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.